Okay, so last year I was looking for a way to write about climate change. I was researching for an angle that would be unique to the Deseret News and would connect with our readers. The phrase stewards of the earth kept coming to mind, and I honestly didn't even know where that phrase came from, but it's something I had heard growing up in the church. And I understood its meaning. I started looking around the Bible for those words, but I didn't find them. It turns out the doctrine is found in scripture, but not necessarily the phrase itself. And it starts with Genesis 2:15. And the Lord God took the man and put into the Garden of Eden to dress it and keep it. What follows in the Bible are multiple references to people as stewards of God's creation, to whom he has entrusted his work. But this idea does not simply appear in Christian and Jewish theology. As Paul Allen Cox pointed out this morning, most major religions, including Buddhism, Christianity, Islam, and Hinduism, have doctrine that points to the sanctity of the earth. The Quran says, "Do you not see that Allah has made what is in the heaven and earth subservient to you and made complete to you his favors outwardly and inwardly?" Another passage reads, "And the earth, we spread it out and cast therein firmly set mountains, and we have made to grow therein of all beautiful kinds, to give sight and as a reminder to every servant who turns to Allah." One Hindu text says, "The entire universe is to be looked upon as the Lord." Another passage in another text kind of clarifies that. "Ether, air, fire, water, earth, planets, all creatures, directions, trees and plants, rivers and seas, they are all organs of God's body. Remembering this, a devotee respects all species." And in 1996, a group of Buddhists released a statement on ecology. "We need to live as the Buddha taught us to live, in peace and harmony with nature. But this must start with ourselves. If we are going to save this planet, we need to seek a new ecological order, to look at the life we lead and then work together for the benefit of all. Unless we work together, no solution can be found." So what do 6.5 billion people have in common? More than 80% of the world's population has a religion. That's 6.5 billion people. And 6 billion of those people are adherents to the 4 biggest religions, which I have already touched on. Oh, it looks like that might not be loading, but it goes through, it's just a chart that shows the populations of different religions. So 6 billion people are part of the main 4 religions. And I believe that religious values shape people's actions and give purpose to their lives in a way secular incentives often cannot. So what if we could harness that power that motivates people to pray 5 times a day, to fast, to pay tithing, and to donate their time and energy to serving others? Acting on faith, what kind of climate-related mountains could we move together as believers? Author and anthropologist Yuval Noah Harari gives us a brief history of humankind in his book Sapiens. He writes about religion and how it separates humans from other animals. Through history, shared faith has facilitated the cooperation of larger and larger groups of people, connecting people across tribes, across regions, across countries, and even empires. In other words, faith in a higher power makes us human. And I think we all have an innate desire to search for meaning and connect with our Creator. So as a journalist, I decided to explore how people's faiths might motivate them to take action against environmental destruction and climate change. I ended up interviewing 8 religious and community leaders from all over the world about their beliefs and what drives them to do more than just pray for the earth, but to actually work as advocates to change the behavior of people and of companies and of countries. So here, I'm going to go through a few of the people that I interviewed. Starting with this Thai monk whose name I'm just going to let you read there on the slide. He has founded 2 schools in Thailand that teach sustainable farming techniques. And those techniques are based on Buddhist principles like the middle way, and this idea of a sufficiency economy. So students at the schools, oh, I have another one that's not loading. We'll go back to this. Yeah, students at the schools learn how to manage soil nutrients by planting a diversity of crops and avoiding chemicals and fertilizers. They also integrate man-made ponds, rice fields, herbs, and trees on one piece of land, which increases the carbon content of the soil. And because water is collected and stored on the property, the model is drought resistant, which is really important because last year Thailand saw record low precipitation. Total rice production fell by 30%. Oh, let me see. Yeah, total rice production is projected to fall 30% in the next 2 decades due to extreme drought conditions along the Chao Phraya River Basin, according to the Thai Development Research Institute. And the Climate Vulnerability Monitor estimates the net economic cost of climate change for the country at $180 billion a year. I'll just stop the share for a minute. In addition to droughts, there are floods when rain does come. As development increases in Thailand, forests are being cleared for the mass monocropping of plants like corn and sugarcane. Habitats are destroyed and soil is eroded, causing flooding during the rainy season. In 2011, Thailand experienced its worst flood ever on its record, resulting in 680 deaths. So this monk that I showed you also told me about a ceremony he's taken part in where trees are ordained as monks too. And villagers are invited to bring offerings of rice and coconut while monks chant and meditate in the forest. When they're finished, they take lengths of saffron cloth, that orange cloth that the monks wear, and they wrap the trees in that cloth in a sacred ceremony. And this discourages anyone from coming into the forest and cutting those trees down. And I just think that's a beautiful way to honor and protect the nature. So I'm going to try and go back to the slide now. Okay, this is Nanditha Krishna from Chennai, India. And every morning, Nanditha Krishna, she's 68, she goes to worship at a sacred fig tree. And she walks around the tree and offers a prayer. The fig tree is sacred to her because it's the same kind of tree that Buddha was sitting under when he attained enlightenment. And it's unique because unlike other plants that produce oxygen during the day and release carbon dioxide at night, the sacred fig tree actually releases oxygen 24 hours a day. So since 1991, this woman, she's led a team of conservationists in restoring 8 bodies of water and 53 sacred groves, which are each between 10 and 100 acres across the country. And she said that for centuries, forests dedicated to the mother goddess were protected by local communities as a matter of faith. But during the colonial period, many sacred lands were forcibly taken and destroyed. And Nanditha told me that she has watched very joyfully as wildlife, including crocodiles, leopards, and birds, have returned to the forests that she and her team have destroyed, or have restored, sorry. And as with Thailand, parts of India have experienced extreme droughts and floods in recent years. At the time I talked to her, thousands of people in Chennai were lining up 4 times a day with plastic pots to collect water that was being brought into the city by train, because so many bodies of water in that region, thousands of bodies of water, had been depleted. So for her, this work really is a matter of life and death. And next we have Reverend Sally Bingham from San Francisco. And my favorite quote from her was, "Everyone who believes in God is an environmentalist. They just might not know it yet." And in the 80s, Reverend Bingham started learning about environmental degradation things like overfishing, deforestation, the contamination of food and water sources. And at her church, the congregation would regularly pray for reverence of the earth. But no one was really doing anything to stop the damage. So she started to feel like these Christians were hypocrites. And she became more and more concerned about this. And at age 45, she decided to go to college so that she could go to seminary, and was finally ordained as a priest at age 55. And then she made this cause her life's work. She founded a nonprofit called the Regeneration Project, which is known now as Interfaith Power and Light. Some of you probably know, and it promotes renewable energy, waste reduction, and the sustainable sourcing of food and materials among religious groups. And so today, the project involves 23,000 congregations of all kinds in 40 states. And she believes religious leaders should lead the way in fighting climate change. She said, every major cultural change has been led by moral voices from religion, whether it's the abolition of slavery, women's rights, or civil rights. Religious leaders bring a moral authority to the conversation. Scientists can come in with the facts, but what religious leaders come in with is doing the right thing, the moral obligation to be a steward of creation. And lastly, I want to highlight this imam from Indonesia because he has done a really excellent job of combining science and religion. And he's from the island Borneo, which is a real hotspot for carbon emissions and deforestation. That's because palm oil trees are the main crop there. And much of the island's natural forests have been slashed and burned to make way for these plants, which are in high demand by overseas corporations that use them to produce everything from makeup to snack foods. And the really sad thing is that in the mid-2000s, the United States led the way in encouraging the use of palm oil for the creation of biofuels, actually in an effort to reduce carbon dioxide emissions from gasoline. But the initiative has had the exact opposite of its intended effect. So this man is a biologist by training, as well as an imam, and he currently works as chairman of the Center for Islamic Studies at the National University in Jakarta. He has helped train more than 1,000 clerics in delivering sermons that connect Islam with environmental science. And one of his major accomplishments was working with the Indonesian Council of Ulama to issue a fatwa, which is an official ruling on a point of Islamic law that prohibits the burning of land and forest. And in the past 4 years since that's been issued, the number of hotspots has successfully declined as a result of that edict and government initiatives. So these people are really inspiring to me. It's amazing how much they've accomplished, driven by their faith. Representative McAdams mentioned this morning that some people use religion as an excuse not to care about climate change and the environment. Some religious people actually question scientific evidence that humans are to blame because they believe these changes are God's will and just part of a natural cycle. But there is no denying what's happening. In the last century, the global average surface temperature has increased by more than 1.5 degrees Fahrenheit. The heat is melting glaciers, threatening coastal communities as sea levels rise 0.13 inches a year, and otherwise wreaking havoc on weather patterns. So the question is, what are we going to do about it? I think the pursuit of a greener life on an individual level is not unlike our pursuit to live more virtuously. So at the Deseret News, I've had the opportunity to do a number of environmental challenges and to document my experience. Here's a screenshot from a video I made about living waste-free for a month. And I partnered with my friend and my roommate, Anne, and together we made a goal that for 1 month, we were not going to throw anything away. We would recycle and we would compost, but anything that would go in a landfill, we collect it in a single glass jar. So this required a lot of lifestyle changes. I had to totally change the way that I eat. to avoid packaged foods. I had to change the way I shop to get things at a farmer's market or to buy them in bulk instead of wrapped in plastic. I tried tablet toothpaste where you chew it up and you add water to make it pasty. Um, and I switched to waste-free menstrual products, which was quite the adjustment. And the experiment also required a lot of thinking ahead, a lot of planning ahead. Luckily, there were some models that we could look to for inspiration. And yeah, one of those people is Bea Johnson. And a growing number of people across the globe are taking the zero waste sentiment to heart, meaning they don't throw anything away at all. Bea Johnson, oh, sorry about that. Bea Johnson is credited with starting the movement more than 10 years ago, and she now has nearly 250,000 followers on Instagram. Her book has sold in 25 languages, millions of copies. And since 2008, her entire family has produced about 1 jar of trash per year. It's absolutely incredible. To minimize her weight, Johnson shops at farmers markets or buys her food in bulk without packaging. She purchases secondhand clothing for herself and her family and makes sure to recycle the fabric. For cleaning products, she relies on vinegar, water, and Castile soap. And instead of material goods, her family enjoys experiences like museums, parks, live entertainment. She follows the 5R method: refuse, reduce, reuse, recycle, and then rot. She now has nearly, yeah, and I would say just like we all need help living the gospel, which is why we go to church, we all need help living green. It is so important that we build communities of support like this one to help each other. But you might question, what difference can one person make? Given that corporations like Coca-Cola, Nestle, and PepsiCo are responsible for the most plastic waste, it is easy to question the importance of lifestyle changes on an individual level. We can make the same argument, though, about individual acts of kindness and righteousness or missionary efforts. Each of us is just a drop in an infinitely large bucket. But what I found out from doing this experiment was that my efforts really did have a ripple effect. To this day, people still ask me about this video, and it sparked some interesting conversations. My coworkers are constantly telling me about changes they've made to get a reusable water bottle or a straw or a cloth napkin, or bringing their own silverware to a restaurant that only provides plastic. And generally, my circle of family and friends are much more aware of these issues. I think that each of us can be an ambassador for good in this way. So the average person makes 4.5 pounds of trash per day. That's 1,600 pounds per year, or the weight of a cow. And stacked to end to end, that would reach the height of the Leaning Tower of Pisa. And so if everybody in Salt Lake City cut their waste by just 1 pound a day, the trash saved would equal the weight of a blue whale every single day. So that's a blue whale's weight worth of trash that would be kept out of our landfill. Here is what our jar looked like at the end of the month. You can see a few wrappers, a lot of stickers from fruit and vegetables, a razor, mascara tube, some other random items. So this was 2 people's trash for a whole month. And I was honestly really proud of this. Now I have to admit, after this experiment, I went right back to throwing stuff away. There were a few habits that stuck, like using reusable containers when I'm packing food. But for the most part, I did revert to my old ways, unfortunately. The same was true after this experiment. This was in 2018. I went a week without a car, and it was quite the challenge to get everywhere I needed to be, from Salt Lake to Provo, at all hours of the day and night. I took the bus, tracks, front runner, rode my bike, took one of those electric scooters. I did a lot of walking. I found that there was a lot of infrastructure missing, but in the places where those bike lanes, bus stops, sidewalks were in place, it made my life so much easier. So I don't take the bus every day anymore, but the experiment did open my mind to the possibilities of public transportation. And whereas previously I had never thought about taking the bus or riding my bike anywhere, I've done it periodically since then. Um, I've had other people contact me and tell me that this video that I made of this experience inspired them to take an alternative mean of transportation as well. So it's easy to get bogged down in this idea that we can't be perfect. It seems that no matter what we do in this modern world, there will be some negative environmental repercussion. When we buy an electric car, we learn about the emissions that go into making a battery. When we buy a reusable water bottle, it might be shipped to us from the other side of the world. It seems like no matter what we do, we can't win. But much like our individual spirituality, I think the direction we're headed in matters as much or more than where we are currently. No matter how much I sin, I never stop trying to repent and be a better person. And no matter how bad I am about trash or transportation, I'm constantly trying to make the greener choice when I'm presented with the option. I try to minimize the meat I eat. I try to reuse things I own instead of buying new ones. And I have goals to make continued changes in my life. So if we're making these small adjustments in our lives, it will accelerate the overall pace of change for everyone. The more times people see you bringing your own Tupperware to a restaurant for your leftovers, or bringing reusable bags to the grocery store, the less weird those things will seem. And the more people see someone biking to work in a dress, the more they will think, oh, maybe I could do that too. I do believe that putting pressure on corporations and governments to support change is important, but I also believe in the power of the individual. And as people of faith, I think our efforts can be amplified through our communities, through our commonalities, and through the things we share in common. So thank you so much, everyone, for listening.